So as we get closer to Maundy Thursday and Easter, my thoughts turn to the feasts that people have at this time of year. And of course, our feasts are going to be very different this year, but I was going to share with you from this book, The Food and Feasts of Jesus, which was written by a friend of ours, Douglas Neal, who is an Episcopal priest in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And in it, he gives the menu for a Passover meal, which includes unleavened bread. I had decided, before all of this where we can't meet, that I would make unleavened bread for our Maundy Thursday feast, which would be similar to what the Passover feast was. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and you won't see everything because it's a much longer process than just the 8 to 10 minutes that we have for this little video. So I have in a food processor 2 cups of unbleached flour, 1 cup of whole wheat flour, and a half tablespoon of salt. And I'm adding a cup of water, a tablespoon of olive oil, and a tablespoon of honey. Now, I know, and you know, that they didn't have food processors, but this is the way the recipe says to do it. So you're going to pulse this until the dough becomes a ball. A little bit more. There it goes. And then on a floured board, you're going to take the dough and knead it just a little bit and get it all put together into a nice firm ball. If you've not done bread before, bread dough can be a little bit sticky. This one is not too bad. And remember, it is unleavened, so you don't really have to do rising time. But we are going to let this dough rest for 30 minutes before we roll it out into the small pieces that you would use for serving the bread. The dough rested for 30 minutes, and then I divided it into 16 pieces. And I will admit that when I'm making things like this, I actually weigh the pieces and I calculate how many grams it takes. Each of these is about 44 grams. And then we're going to roll them out. They need to be fairly thin. And to try to keep them round, you keep turning the dough as you roll it. And this looks like it has way too much flour on it. And I'm going to do that with all of these, and we get this small circle, and it goes on a baking sheet, and I have a Silpat on my baking sheet, but you could use parchment paper instead. And I'm going to spend the time to roll all of these, and you don't get to watch all of that. Now I'm rolling the last one, and I have 2 trays with 8 pieces of unleavened bread on each one, and I'm going to put them in a 350-degree oven, and they'll cook for 6 minutes, and then you flip them over and cook them for 5 minutes more. So I'm finishing flipping over the 16 pieces of the unleavened bread, and I'll put them back in the oven for another 5 minutes. So now they're out of the oven, and I have some on a plate, and I have charosette, which is a fruit mixture, and it's made with a 1/4 pound of raisins, a 1/4 pound of dried apricots cut in half, a 1/4 pound of dried figs with the stems removed and cut in half, and the fruits soaked in water for 4 hours or overnight. And then you drain it, put it in a food processor, and add 2 tablespoons of honey, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and 2 teaspoons of dry sherry, and you process it, and then mix in toasted 3/4 cup of toasted almonds to make the charset, which is served with the unleavened bread at our Passover feast, which is a Seder. And so for Easter, I wouldn't make these, but I'll make some kind of yeast bread that I will share with my children, even though we don't get to actually visit with each other as part of our feast. And so thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful Holy Week.